Peace, YouTube. This is Flaroon coming to you today to discuss new topics of discussion. I'm so sorry I've been out of the loop. Much has occurred, and I wanted to make sure. I'm so grateful that you guys kind of get on me. I've been in the Matrix, and you know I'm not accustomed to being in the Matrix. And in the Matrix, time exists, whereas normally where I am daily is somewhere where time is not a factor. It does not exist. I'm living outside of the Matrix normally. But I had been in the Matrix, and sometimes when I'm in the Matrix, I get lost in time because I'm not adjusted to it. So, with no further ado, I want to start off a new topic of discussion. Much has happened from my last video. Remember, I was discussing aspects of the fourth blood moon that would bring in shifts and changes, and also along with Halloween just passed, which is a big ritual time and occult time. And during Halloween, as you know, many people pass away. They do many rituals in order to invoke new energies, sometimes negative for everyone else, but it brings some sort of greatness or wealth or abundance to whoever else they're doing it too. So just wanted to state that. So anyway, I want to kind of get into the topic of the Pleiadians. It's come to my attention that, after some research, and remember I did the video on the Pleiadians and saying I really don't see any residue from those entities existing. If they did, they're not documented anywhere. There's no statues or monuments depicting that these Pleiadians ever existed, in the form that they're stating, like these big, tall, white, big entities. I still to this day have a hard time with that, because it's for me, I like to research, but I always like some tangible proof of the Pleiadian. But anyway, I've been kicking with my other brethren that are also in the UFO community, that are also researchers and whistleblowers and contactees and abductees, and come to find out, I've kind of come to a conclusion. Well, I've come up with something that I think could be a factor. The Pleiadians have some connection to Hitler. And from what I understand is that during the time when Hitler came into his own, when there was into his power, he came in contact with these entities. And to my understanding, they were the Pleiadians who, in return for giving him some power and prestige, they would give him technology. There was an exchange, an even exchange. He would do something for them in exchange for getting technology. And as you know, Hitler was phenomenal in getting all this technology that was way beyond his capability of ever having at that time. That was in the 40s. And remember, Germany, when Hitler reigned, Germany, he pretty much was able to take over many of the neighboring countries without resistance. And he also upheld the standard of superiority with the blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, which is very non-reminiscent of who he was or his family, who did not look like that. And we kind of know that the Pleiadians, from what people who are supposedly in contact with them say, is that they're blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and that could be why he revered them for some reason. And from the 40s, what I've kind of researched and kind of came to a conclusion is that those entities had hijacked our timeline. And that's where we see the craziness in the world and so on. Fast forward to our time now, in the modern day Matrix, where we have upheaval, we have a lot of racial upheaval, a lot of bigotry, a lot of madness and war like behavior, a lot of coup d'etat kind of behavior, colonializing happened prior to obviously Hitler being reigning. But we see post the war, a lot of the remnants of the Nazis, because we know that the Nazis did not lose. They kind of promoted that they lost, but really it was a win for them because all of the head sergeants and lieutenants were extradited into Central America, Argentina, Chile, parts of Central America, and also most of the eugenics scientists were brought to America to work the modern day eugenics system that we live under today. Thus comes the vaccinations, the fluoride put into the drinking water, all that good stuff. And that all comes from Nazis. But from what I know is that supposedly, I say supposedly, I know it's supposedly, I say stuposedly because it's so stupid. Supposedly, the Pleiadians were in cahoots with the Nazis, and that's why the Nazis were able to dominate as they were. Also, Hitler did some sort of time, he did some time jumping. He was able to travel through time. And remember the Bell? There was like a Bell kind of UFO that was found in the United States later on. And come to find out, the markings on it were Nazi markings that were originally from German during the time where the Nazis were occupying certain countries. But it was their technology. It had markings from the Nazis. This Bell-looking UFO thing that was found. I got to get the name of where it was found. I forgot which country it was found in. I mean, it was found in the United States, but I forgot what town it was actually found in, what city. But it was found here. So they actually were traveling through time. They were able to do that. So the ETs that they were working alongside of assisted them with doing that. So we have that going on. And I've come to find out there was hijacking of our timeline, meaning that, to my overstanding, and this is I'm surmising from what I'm discussing, what I'm reading, what I'm researching, what I'm getting pieces of the puzzle, talking to other contactees, abductees, people who have some relationship with the Pleiadians, supposedly, and those who have studied aspects of these entities. From what I know, these are entities, these Pleiadians are actually not as grand and wonderful as we think. They were humanoids, people from the future, Europeans from the future, and they were not really Europeans. These are entities that actually had to live inside of the earth in the future because they weren't able to live on the surface anymore because of what's about to occur with our planet, with the second and third sun and all that magnetic energy. So many of the Europeans had to go inside, and then they started to inbreed amongst each other, kind of creating all this recessive genealogy, which also produces non-pigmentation and also a recessive gene of having blue-eyed and blonde hair. These entities from the future were able to get technology, and because they were living in such a state of kind of deprivation, they decided to hijack, go back in time, and from what I understand, they also were with Roosevelt and change a lot of the historical events that skewed kind of racial cohesiveness. So from what I know, they jumped back, these human people that are from the future that lived underground, that call themselves the Pleiadians. This is what I'm surmising. Now, mind you, you guys are very I always love that you add your tidbits on what you think. Add it, because remember, I'm learning every day, but this is just what I'm surmising. They went back in the past, hijacked certain timeline, changed the historical events in their favor so that in the future they're able to have a more advantageous life. But what happens is if you shift a particular timeline, there's always residue that will come across. You may get what you want initially, but it's almost like the pendulum goes too far to the right, and the universe has a way of leveling everything. So all the other timelines that are still existing in the correct way without the inception are trickling over and will bleed over into our timeline later on. And that's where you're getting all this racial upheaval and the super awakening, which was going to happen regardless with the indigenous people. And when I say indigenous, I'm talking about Black people, Negroid people, brown people, Moors, copper people. I'm talking about the original people that lived on the surface of the planet. Obviously, anyone who has hypermelanation anyone who has high pigmentation, those are natural entities to the surface of the planet. Anything other than that is not natural. It's either been created or mutated based on maybe some finagling with people's DNA, which we know a lot of the ETs do anyway, because we're all hybrid to a certain degree. I'm really hot. I'm actually in the car, and I know I had to make a video for you guys, and I'm really, really trying to make it so that we can talk about a lot of the things that I've been studying and found out. And I found out a lot while I've been in Matrix about many of the different ETs. But anyway, so what do you think? I think these entities went and hijacked the timeline, and what's happening now is we're getting a bleed over at this particular time of the timeline trying to reset itself into a more cohesive, balanced energies. So now, even though they hijacked the timeline to make it more racially sound for them in the future, it's going to eventually turn back to the way it was supposed to be in eventuality. Like, they can skew it at the beginning, but again, the universe has a way of leveling everything out. So even if they change one aspect of the timeline in the past, remember, past, present, and future are kind of overlapping on one another. It's happening simultaneously. Even if they change it, the other dimensions that are still existing, the other timelines that are still existing in the way that it was originally done are going to merge together, and eventually whatever happens, like let's say the timeline, certain presidents weren't living or they were living, the ones that were assassinated. Let's say Kennedy's existing now and he wasn't assassinated, because I believe that's also who made it so that Kennedy was shot, because Kennedy was actually going to disclose presence, the ET presence in the government. And he was going to disclose it on national television. And there was a couple other things that he was going to bring up, and they assassinated him. And I believe the Pleiadians, this is what I'm coming together with. Remember, I'm learning different things, and this is my synopsis of everything. You can definitely share some stuff in what you think, but I believe they were the reason why Kennedy died. So let's say there was another timeline where Kennedy's actually living. Everything changes based on another president existing and changing laws or holding certain standards in the environment. So those other timelines are bleeding in now, and we're starting to become more balanced back to the way the timeline should have been before it was incepted by these Pleiadians. Now, again, I believe it to be the Pleiadians because I see the connection between the Nazis and this particular entities, and the Nazis had a fascination, an obsession with the blonde hair, blue eyes, and that is the Pleiadians are known to have those characteristics more so than the other ETs. Other ETs come so many different ways. There's so many types of physicalities that come with many of the different interdimensional, extraterrestrial, interdimensional type of beings. But this particular visual of these entities are very reminiscent of what we consider to be the Pleiadians, and I see it as correlating that these entities were the ones who were working alongside of the Nazis. And I'll get more into that. I'd like for you to share your take on it. I've just come up with this. I've been doing a lot of research, and I'm talking to a lot of different people. And people, I don't just talk to brown people. I talk to everybody. I mean, everyone talks to Fleur Brown. As much as I speak about the brown people, remember, I speak about things that are reminiscent of me and that are true to my heart, and where I have an affinity for certain things. And because I'm a copper woman, a brown woman, a Negro woman, I'm going to talk about things that are reminiscent or that are of my interest. And I know I get a lot of comments sometimes about, why do you make it about race? Well, remember, if you are someone who looks different, let's say you're a white person and you're talking about things, you make it very reminiscent of your people, like maybe talking about the Pleiadians because they look more like you. So I do the same thing. I'm talking about things that regard me and people who look like me and everybody else, but the ET community is much bigger than just a few ETs and reptoids and so on. There's a blackout, especially regarding the melanated ETs, the negroid looking ETs, which is a lot more of those than any other ET, other than the ones that look kind of different. Like some of them look like fish, some of them look like reptiles, some of them look like squid. There's so many different types of ET groups, and we live in a vast universe. I get that, but I wanted to definitely discuss the hijacking of the timeline. So why don't you give a share for that? And I'm going to make some more videos. I have some more topics to talk about, but I kind of wanted to throw that out there because I'm kind of I got that information and I'm kind of putting everything together, and I realized there's been a hijacking. And also, when your timeline has been changed, one thing I know, by living outside of the matrix, this is what you kind of notice. And yes, I do live outside the matrix. I key in the matrix, which I've been for the last couple weeks. That's why you guys haven't seen me, is because I've been in the matrix more often. And once you're in the matrix, oh my gosh, you guys, it's so challenging. Time, and it's almost like you get tired. So when I'm in the matrix and then I come out, I'm really, really tired, and I have to kind of recoup, because the matrix is a whole bunch of holograms. Time is kind of, time is a factor. So it makes you feel like you're always oppressed to do something else. It's almost like a consistent quickening. At least that's my feeling when I go in the matrix, but I'm out of the matrix for a little bit and I was able to make a video, and thank you, all you wonderful people, for, pushing me. I could talk for days about this, and I speak to many of the different entities. So my next video, I'm going to talk about the gentleman who found me, and I thought he was a blue avian, but he's something else. I believe he was an interterrestrial who sought me out after I made the last video. It was very, very interesting, and I found, I found our conversations to be so enlightening. So I'll get into that to the next conversation. I'm hot. I have to go dance. I love to dance, and that's part of me being outside the matrix. I do everything I enjoy, and I would say for you, if you're still residing in the matrix, try to find your way out. Raise your vibrations high enough so that you can have an outlet, a gateway outside of the matrix, so that you can reside outside of there and recover and enjoy. And part of being in another dimension, a higher dimension, is everything that you do in the other dimension is of joy, of what brings you joy, and it's enlightenment. So anyway, I'm sorry I made this video so all over the place, but again, my take is the Pleiadians hijacked the timeline in their favor, and it actually worked to denigrate, to further decimate the cohesiveness of the indigenous people. And it really wasn't just meant for them; it was for others too. But to make them get a bigger jump up in schematics as far as like finances and everything, so that they're able to change their future timeline. But it's not going to work because it's already shifting, because the bleed over from the other dimensions is happening, the other timelines is happening now, and they're not going to get the results that they wanted, and they might end up doing it again. And again, when they jump a timeline or when they change a timeline, what you'll notice is a lot of times you'll feel deja vu. Whenever the timeline's been changed, deja vu is what you normally feel. People used to, if you watch The Matrix, you'll notice that. Like, remember when Neo saw the cat in the hallway, and I think Morpheus said, Neo said, "That's strange." He sees a cat. He said, "Did you see the cat?" No, he said, "I saw the cat." He said, "Yes." He said, "Did the cat look the same or different?" He said, "I don't know." It meant that something in the room had changed unbeknownst to them. They'll change the hologram, so you have to be very mindful of that. And if you're getting deja vu, it means that the timeline has been hijacked. I hadn't had it much until, around 2012 is when I felt more deja vu. I haven't had it recently when I was in the Matrix. So meaning the timeline has not been shifted at this point, at least according to me. But in 2012, I probably had about 10 incidents of deja vu, and that is a sign that somebody's messed or hijacked the timeline or changed something in the timeline. Anyway, gotta go. I love you all. I miss you. I hope all is well. I know much is shifting in your lives because I hear about it via your emails. And just say, keep your head up, keep positive, keep your vibrations high, and we'll discuss more. So next video, a couple videos I'll make will be about my liaison with one of the interterrestrials, and also talk about some of the other ETs that are coming into my frame of consciousness. All right, I'm out of the Matrix, but I'll speak to you later. Peace. Fleur Brune. Love you.